Hello, this is Jack Spurbeck here with my YouTube video number 3. The title of the video is Plato's Allegory of the Cave. Now, Plato was a Greek philosopher. He lived around 450 BC, before Jesus, 450 years. And he was one of the famous Greek philosophers like Aristotle and Plato, and he also was a friend and a protege of Heraclides. And if you remember, Heraclides was featured in my first YouTube video, Heraclides River. And if you haven't seen that, tune in and see that guy. Okay, so Plato's Allegory of the Cave was written in the Republic. Plato's Republic, book number 7. And this story, which is a short, usually fictional, or it is a fictional story that teaches a lesson. Now, Plato, in his allegory, was considered to be, and is considered to be, the most famous story or passage in Western philosophy that nobody's ever heard of. But it's a good story. I hope you enjoy it, and I think it teaches a lesson. Now, Plato's student was Glaucon, and Glaucon is featured in the allegory. During his telling of the allegory, he talks to Glaucon, and he is teaching him a lesson of philosophy. Now, I think I've covered the preliminary information. Let's go on and talk about the allegory in detail. And let's go look at the sculpture, or what I might look at the pot. And our stage is set here in a cave. So we're trying to represent a cave here. And inside the cave are certain characters or certain points of view that we need to consider. First of all are the prisoners. The prisoners are facing the wall, and they're chained. They're chained by their heads and by their feet. And the prisoners are chained from birth. They're prevented to look back from their cave chains and from their dwelling. They can only see forward, and they've been this way since birth. Behind the prisoners is a wall, and behind the wall are the puppeteers. And the puppeteers are carrying various objects, and behind the puppeteers, or maybe ahead of the puppeteers, is a fire. And the fire flames are casting light on the puppeteers' puppets, and they create shadows on the back of the cave wall. And the cavers, I call the cavers, or the prisoners, their reality consists of those shadows. That's all they know. And they delight in identifying the shadows, classifying shadows, identifying them, and predicting which kind of shadow is coming next. The shadows may consist of plants and of animals or ordinary objects. And that's the life of the prisoner. Now, the prisoners enjoy their stay in the cave. But let's say, my dear Glaucon, what would happen if a prisoner escaped or left the cave and saw the fire and realized the fire was casting shadows from the puppeteers, and the shadows that he actually saw were not real? They were a lie, only shadows. Glaucon, wouldn't the puppeteer have scared them, or wouldn't the prisoner be afraid? Yes, said Glaucon, I think they would, because his life consisted only of the shadows. His reality was of shadows, and now suddenly he sees the truth. That might worry him. And yes, said Plato, it does. But he wants to leave. He wants to leave and go back in to the cave. But he's forced out. He's dragged further out of the cave, and he's brought into the real world. And he sees the sunlight, and the sunlight hurts his eyes. And it's painful for him to be out into the world. But eventually, gradually, his eyes grow accustomed to the light. And he sees now the true wisdom, true knowledge. He sees nature, birds and flowers, hears poetry, and he hears music. And he becomes enlightened with the real world. Glaucon, wouldn't the prisoner want to go back and tell his fellow prisoners of what they're missing? Tell them of the real reality? Yes, Glaucon says, I think he would. In fact, that's what the prisoner does. He goes back. He goes back to see his cavers. He says, guys, you are missing out. You're missing out on the big picture here. You don't know the world. The reality of the world is not the shadows on the cave. This is not the real world. But the prisoners don't like it. They don't want to believe him. They like their delightful world of the cave. In fact, they say, if you don't stop telling us these stories and telling us about your world, we will kill you. Go, leave us, they said. And so the prisoner leaves the cave. He leaves his mates back. And Plato says, Glaucon, that's the way life is. That's the way the life is for the philosopher, for the teacher. Our job is to help see the patients or see our fellow man, our prisoner friends. We have to bring them out of the cave. We have to teach them. But they don't want to leave. They're reluctant to leave. They rather see the shadows. And such is the life of the teacher. As a matter of fact, Socrates, Plato's teacher, wanted to convert the populace of Athens. And the rulers, the Athenian government, put Socrates to death. He forced him to drink the hemlock. And Socrates was forced to die, even as the prisoners wanted to kill their old prisoner mate. Again, that's what life is like. And Plato goes on through most of the allegory, and he talks about the teachers and about the philosophers, and he spends a lot of time talking about the politicians, and he shows the contrast between the good politician and the bad politician, and the good politician and the bad politician. And again, such is life. So for the most part, that's our allegory of the cave. That's the allegory as told to Glaucon. Now let's take this up, let's wrap this up another notch. We're going to take it to another level. Let's say all of a sudden, the plug is pulled. We're in a matrix. We live in a matrix. We live in a world that is not the world we suspect. It's the world of a computer. We're nothing but a computer program. Someone pulls the plug. We take the red pill. We crawl in the rabbit hole. We're out of the matrix. And we see Morpheus flying his machine, his hovercraft called the Nebuchadnezzar. And we sit beside Morpheus and see the world as it really is. It really is outside the matrix. We see a world of desolation and destruction ruled by computers and machines and robots. But then suddenly, we take the blue pill. We climb out of the rabbit hole. And someone plugs us back in. And we're back into the Matrix. Now, the Matrix is really a kinder, gentler place, whereas the reality is not so good after all. But that's obviously a correlation with the Matrix, the movie. But many people make parallels with the Matrix, with Plato's Allegory. But there are some parallels that could be made. Now I'm going to take this up to another notch, and I'm going to bring us up to a new level. In this level, we're going to talk about the money shot, how the allegory pertains to us today and to our life. Because most of our people, and many of our people, I would say most of our people are cavers. The people we know are cavers. They delight in the images of the cave. They can't see beyond it. They don't want to leave the cave. They're happy in the cave. They're materialistic. They're narcissistic. They're prejudiced. They can't see beyond their own religion, beyond their own race, beyond their own sex. They don't want to leave the cave. They're happy in the cave. In fact, we watch TV. What do we see on TV? The 10 o'clock news. We see violence. We see political bickering. We see destruction, racism, bigotry. And we see the world in turmoil, the world in destruction, controlled by computers, by robots and machines. Whoa, baby, we didn't see that coming. That's we're back in the Matrix again. But it's true. We like the TV. We like the materialistic world. Now, unlike the cave in the shadows, the TV represents reality. So we're not totally seeing lies. What we see on TV is reality. And it's sad to say. But that's what we got to break free of. We got to break free, and we've got to learn to respect and honor and love our fellow man, woman, and child, irregardless of race and religion and creed. It's our job to do this because in the end, after all, we all are children of God. Well, that's my take on Plato's Allegory of the Cave. And it's an interesting story, and it's one story or allegory that pertains to us today, I think very much so, without a doubt. Now, if you like my videos, please subscribe to my channel, and I enjoy spending time with you here today. And thank you for spending time with me as well. And I might add that in the end, it's not the art, it's the story. In fact, I might say, the story is the art. Now I have my eyes shut. Oh, sorry.